What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Jay Debates. I'm your host. I go by the name of Jay, and we are now on to Jordan episode 23. If you guys missed episode 22, go back and check that one out. It's titled, Is Klay Thompson a good fit for the Dallas Mavericks? In that episode, we discussed the 11-year vet and four-time NBA champion Klay Thompson, looked at the pros and cons of his game, and determined if he'd be able to fit in alongside Dallas' star duo of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. We also explored the running narrative of him being washed and looked at whether or not that really was true or whether that was just a narrative, like a theme that was running based on recent performances. And ultimately, I made my decision on whether Klay would or wouldn't fit in with Dallas after looking at the reasons as to why he would and wouldn't fit in. So if that sounds of interest to you, if you missed that one, again, that is episode 22. Now, getting back into Jordan episode 23, which has nothing to do with Jordan. The question for episode 23 is Tobias Harris a good fit for the Detroit Pistons? Again, is Tobias Harris a good fit for the Detroit Pistons? Now, 31-year-old NBA vet and all-time great bag finesser Tobias Harris himself and the Detroit Pistons reached an agreement on a 2-year, $52 million contract. As to why I refer to Harris as an all-time great bag finesser, according to sideline sources, Harris is now projected to earn $302 million over the course of his 13-year NBA career. Yes, that's over $250 million. Keep in mind, he's never made an All-Star, All-NBA, or All-Defensive team. He's never won a ring or a regular season award either, for that matter. So, for Harris to have made the money he's made throughout his career, hats off to him and hats off to his agent. They did a hell of a job. But, anyways, the 76ers parted ways with Harris after his awful play in the playoffs and brought in star veteran Paul George to replace him. I talked about PG and the Sixers and said I believe that Philadelphia was the optimal destination for him in episode 17. If you missed it, check it out. Looking at the Pistons, who have been one of the worst teams in the league for a while, they picked up Harris, and now for the second time in his career, he will be a Detroit Piston. Harris caught a lot of flack in his most recent season for his recent playoff performance, as well as his inability to complement franchise player on the 76ers, Joel Embiid, despite probably being the highest paid role player ever. And the Pistons, on the flip side, caught a lot of flack for their failure to bring talent to Detroit over the years and properly rebuild. Even in this offseason, the Pistons had the highest amount of cap space in the league and have yet to land a star. And I'm going to timestamp this shit because free agency is crazy and I don't have time to get off of this episode, check the news, and something else crazy to happen in free agency. So as of 6 o'clock, July 2nd, the Pistons have not landed a star or a superstar. Now, looking at the roster, they have a very young group, the fourth youngest in the league last season, and they're led by their 22-year-old rising star, Cade Cunningham. After their franchise worst 14-68 record last season, it's all but obvious the Pistons need to improve their roster in a lot of ways. Is Tobias Harris a piece that will be able to fit in and help the Pistons improve? Let's look at why he will and why he won't be able to. Starting with why he won't be a good fit on the Pistons. One of the biggest areas the Pistons need help in is three-point shooting. They finished a whopping 29th in the league in three-pointers made and 26th in three-point percentage. In Harris's last season, he was just a 35% shooter from deep. That's not bad at all. In fact, that's actually okay. But that's also his worst outing from three in the past 6 years. He's not a sharpshooter. He's not a sniper from downtown, which the Pistons do need, but have very few of. In fact, off the top of my head, the only shooters from the Pistons I can really think of are Evan Fournier, if he's even still on the Pistons, if he stays in Detroit, and Tim Hardaway Jr., who was recently added also in this offseason. So, getting back to him, he's not the greatest shooter which the Pistons need. Another flaw Harris has is his slow decision making, which leads to him slowing down the tempo on offense and hurting the flow of the offense. While in basketball, good ball movement certainly does lead to good looks, it opens up the opportunity of getting high percentage shots. Frequently, when the ball went to Tobias Harris in Philadelphia, he would be hesitant, not deciding quick enough whether to keep swinging the rock or try and score. Sometimes he would even just hold on to the ball. And this type of hesitancy and poor decision making can hurt the Pistons severely, who are already the third worst scoring team in the NBA. Not to mention, Harris has a strong tendency to take mid-range shots. And this may not sound like a bad thing, and it's not anything horrible at all. But it is outdated in today's game, and it's again not what the Pistons need the most offensively. For these same reasons of slowing down the offensive pace, not being reliable enough from three, and chasing mid-range jumpers last season on the Sixers, Harris proved that he wasn't a good fit for playing alongside his franchise player Joel Embiid, and he found himself in what I would call no man's land for a role player. He wasn't good enough to be a star, and he wasn't complimentary enough to fit in. Keep in mind, this is concerning because Harris and Embiid have been playing together since 2018. The fact that Harris wasn't able to adapt his game during these 6 years by changing his overall play style in order to better fit in with his franchise player may be troublesome when he comes to Detroit. Also, Harris has been a good defender, and while he's been a good defender who can guard multiple positions throughout his career, he had his worst year this past season in terms of defensive rating. After the 23-24 season, Harris's defensive rating has now gotten worse in the past 4 consecutive seasons. The Pistons have been seen by opponents as an all-you-can-eat buffet team, with opponents averaging 119 points per game against them, 4th most in the league. Worst of all, Harris flat out disappeared in the most important part of the season, the postseason. Starting with the 23-24 play-in tournament, Harris would only score 9 points in 33 minutes on 40% shooting from the field, 50% from the line, and 0% from 3. He did grab 10 rebounds, but overall it was a horrible game. And I don't care what option you are, first, second, third, it was a horrible game. So yes, he was a third option player, but it was a horrible game for a third option player. It would have been a horrible game for a bench warmer. And not to mention, he played bad in a game where his team was trying to secure their spot in the playoffs. They barely won that game. And in the playoffs, Harris's poor play would continue, with him averaging 9 points, shooting 43% from the field, and 33% from 3. Superstar Joel Embiid and star Tyrese Maxey tried their best to get their 76ers team past the first round of the playoffs this postseason, with the both of them averaging at least 30 points and also pitching in nicely in the assisting and rebounding categories. But ultimately, they would lose to the New York Knicks in 6 games. A lot of fans and NBA analysts blame this loss on Tobias Harris because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be as the third option in the playoffs. He was getting paid like a superstar, but he was playing like a placeholder that the team just added in to have a full roster. While the play-in even sounds very wistful for the Detroit Pistons at this point in time, Harris was playing at this level during the playoffs. It didn't get it done for the Sixers, and it certainly won't get it done for the Pistons if they ever do make the playoffs. Now, with that being said, let's look at the positives. I believe Harris playing in Detroit for 3 years is somewhat of an advantage for him in terms of getting comfortable with the franchise. I get it, the Pistons are an unstable organization, but Harris should be able to sense some familiarity with the culture and the customs. Nothing huge, but I do see it as a positive because I think him already playing in Detroit before will make this transition for Harris easier. More importantly, Harris is coming off of a 17 point, 6.5 rebound, 3 assists, and 1 steal per game regular season. The Pistons now have a solid scorer to help them put the ball in the basket more as a team, a good rebounder who can push them near being a top 10 rebounding team this upcoming season, and a decent passer for his position. As I discussed, Harris wasn't the best decision maker, but excluding Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Marcus Sasser, and human trash bucket himself, Killian Hayes, Harris's relatively small 3 assists per game was higher than anyone else on the 23-24 Pistons roster. In the 23-24 season, Harris shot 49% from the field and 88% from the free throw line. The Pistons were the 6th worst field goal shooting team, and despite them being an above average team in terms of free throw shooting, with the 12th highest free throw percentage, I cannot stress enough that the Pistons need every point they can possibly get, and Harris shooting nearly 90% from the line can only help their course. That's a great free throw percentage for any position, but especially for his position. Also, Harris was efficient in terms of protecting the ball too. He only averaged 1 turnover per game despite playing 34 minutes on average. The Pistons averaged the 2nd highest turnovers per game. So with Harris assumed to have a healthy role in the rotations, the Pistons should be able to hold on to the ball more. Looking at the 23-24 roster, the Pistons ended the season with Harris averaged the 2nd most points, 4th most assists, 3rd most rebounds, and 2nd most steals compared to this roster. He also shot the 2nd highest field goal percentage and the highest free throw percentage amongst starters of the Pistons. Harris also averaged the lowest turnovers per game amongst the Pistons starters, despite playing more minutes per game on average than all of them. And Harris played the 3rd most total games of anyone on the roster. Lastly, and matter of fact, that is important, him playing that many games. I've been told time and time again, the best ability is availability. So him being able to have played 70 games, he only missed 12 games last season. That's really solid because, I mean, I really do respect Cade's game. Cade is doing everything he can for the Pistons, but injuries have been a big problem for him in his short career, his very young career. So I think that that's important. So I didn't just want to skip over that. But lastly, despite having his worst defensive rating of his career in the 23-24 season, it was still a better defensive rating than any player to ever play for the Pistons in the 23-24 season. I can't make this shit up. So, in summary, Harris has a handful of attributes he will bring to his new reunited team. And he should be able to make a comfortable transition considering he's played here before and get straight to it. So, now that both the good fit and the bad fit reasons have been explored, it's time for a decision to be made. In the case of whether or not Tobias Harris will be a good fit for the Detroit Pistons, I must say that he will be a good fit for the Detroit Pistons. No, he will not be the best fit, but he is one of the best fits for a Piston team that is suffering in so many categories who didn't have a lot of options in free agency. Harris can provide much needed defense and offense to this team. He's already played in Detroit before, and he's not being paid nearly as much as he was in Philly. This signing eats into some of the Pistons cap space, but they still have the ability to sign some more talent and perhaps improve their bench and improve in the areas they've been lacking in as a team. Yes, Harris wasn't the best decision maker on offense in Philly in terms of slowing down the ball movement, but he still took care of the ball and was insanely efficient. Again, only averaging 1 turnover in 34 minutes per game. Probably the best ratio in the league, or at least one of the best ratios in the league for somebody playing that many minutes. So, in my opinion, he is the prime example of one team's trash being another team's treasure. Philly fans treated Harris like he was trash, and a lot of it is due to the play-in and the playoffs. But a lot of it is just due to the fact that Philly fans are brutal. They don't have a lot of patience, and if you aren't meeting their expectations, they're going to let you know about it. With all the talk I heard about Harris, I was surprised to see him recording an exceptional amount of points and rebounds per game, and to see him scoring efficiently from the field overall. Yes, Harris's three-point percentage is as low as it's been in the past 6 years, but it's still a solid percentage, and it's still better than most players on the Pistons. Not excusing his postseason play either, because he was bad. But because of his great negotiating skills and him securing the bag, it ultimately led to unrealistic and unfair expectations placed on him. Now, I 100% understand some people may feel like he was way too greedy in his asking price, but the real ones to blame in this situation are the 76ers themselves. They knew they knew what they were getting with Harris. They knew what they were getting into. They knew he wasn't a star or a superstar, yet they still paid him as if he was one. While Harris probably knew himself he was getting over, you can't blame a player for wanting to secure their future financially in case of an injury or God knows what else. I mean, even think about if you're negotiating with somebody, if you're negotiating your worth or how much you're trying to get paid. Of course, you're going to try to seek the most money out of the situation. And it was no different with him. Not to mention, the Sixers did allegedly choose Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. So, again, I believe Harris will fit in with the Pistons. Not necessarily the fit that makes the most sense, but arguably the fit that makes the most sense available, the best fit available. I mean, Klay Thompson is gone, Paul George is gone, Pascal Siakam is gone, etc. And I get it. Yes, DeMar DeRozan is still available, and he is a better player. But he would not have made sense for the Pistons, in my opinion. I mean, a 34-year-old mid-range focus guard who's an under 30% three-point shooter for his career that will need the ball in his hands a lot isn't ideal for the Pistons. Yes, he, again, is a better player than Harris. And yes, he will score a lot. But Harris is a better shooter, rebounder, and defender. And for those reasons, a better overall fit. And honestly, like I said, I was looking for reasons as to why I was hearing so much about Harris. But ultimately, he scored a decent amount. He rebounded exceptionally as well. He was okay in passing. He shot the ball efficiently. I mean, from the field, he was fairly efficient from three. He was very efficient from the free throw line. He took care of the ball. So all in all, I mean, he did have a pretty good season. Of course, it's not worth the amount of money that he was paid, but again, I already covered that. So, with that being said, the verdict is in. This is a nice signing from Detroit. Nothing crazy. Unfortunately, there just wasn't a lot of players worth investing big money into this season. Most of the worthy players, talent-wise, are older, and they probably weren't interested in Detroit anyways, vice versa. Perhaps next year things will be different, but that wraps up this episode. So as always, like, comment, subscribe. I don't care what platform you're on. Make sure you're being notified when I drop new content. I am working really hard to get new stuff out fast and walk you guys through this complicated, erratic ass free agency. This is my third episode in the last day and a half, so make sure you're receiving the notifications. I am noticing my numbers are starting to increase at a quicker rate after I drop my episodes. So I thank those of you who are notified when new episodes come out. As always, also, I thank you all for listening to the very end. Stay tuned for more episodes. This is Jay Debates, and I'm out.